Fresh takes. Welcome to Don't Evolve Me, the place like Ash, Ketchum's Pikachu. We don't evolve, we just level up. And we're doing Invincible, Season 2, Episode 2, Fresh Takes. Get your fresh takes here, along with Brandon Klein. What's up,
Hello.
Brandon?
Back again.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk this episode with you. And I kind of gave you the pretext before you watched it a little bit, because I'm like, it's a little... As a comic book fan, like when I see an episode like this, I really feel like I enjoyed all of it because I'm like, oh, I remember that comic. Oh, I remember that comic. I remember that comic. But like, as someone who's casual is such a bad word. I don't want to say casual because you're very much like
somebody who is uninformed
Invincible person. You don't you're going into it blind.
Yep.
I was just like, I'm really curious what's your thoughts on it, because I've seen reviews that were kind of meh, and I'm like, I want to know I want to know your thoughts.
My first thoughts was I don't understand why people didn't like it.
Yeah,
I thought it was interesting. I don't know, like the stuff about the Guardians and stuff like that. I thought was really interesting, like learning more about their backstories and you know, kind of seeing what's happening after they're gone, because we never really got any time with the actual Guardians. They literally die in the first episode of the first season.
Yeah,
so you never really get to see a lot about who they are, where they come from, and stuff like that, and getting a little bit more backstory on the other heroes and kind of setting up, you know, a potential like, you know, rising of sorts in a way of like new Guardians kind of, I think is interesting idea.
Yeah, and like this is very much a lore episode. This episode was giving out the lore, and some of it we'll go through, like some of it that I think is like important. I made a list of like, here's the important like lore bits to really like think about, like what's coming up shortly, and not to make it spoilery, but just like, hey, here's our like the threats that are on its way. Because I feel like this episode was very lore. You could argue filler. I think filler. I don't think filler is a good word for it. No, I feel like you could argue filler because like it's more of a table setting episode. It's more like, hey, we're progressing the story along. We're progressing these characters along. Like Mark and Debbie, they got to grieve. Like we are seeing, like grieving is part of their story this season. We're seeing that, but also we have to set up all these other heroes before like or all these villains and heroes before we can really get to anything like important. You know, you can't
you can't just like all of a sudden go in and have these new characters like have them working with the new, or like Darkwing, for some reason, drawing a blank. Darkwing's like sidekick and stuff like that. If all of a sudden that's just
hey,
all right, not his sidekick, his assistant.
My bad. When we get to that part, I feel really that word is particular. I feel like me and you have association with that.
Oh yeah.
We have to reveal that story.
Oh yeah. But I thought that was important. All of that was important. The Martian dude or whatever, obviously I feel like that was very important, kind of establishing that and explaining that, and even just learning about the Atlanteans and like, you know, like that they're an actual existing race kind of thing, you know, that exists. And I think all of that is important for world building and explaining kind of what's going on.
You have to marinate the steak.
I feel like it's really kind of showing the rippling consequences of what happened in the first season as well.
Yeah, it shows the consequences, but it's also marinating the other storylines. You can't just like, I feel like these reviewers sometimes, like when people watch, like, oh, that wasn't like exciting. The plot wasn't there. I don't understand what's happening. And they're like, it's bad. I'm like, no, there's a difference between bad filler and like good filler. And I think if you said this was a good filler episode, I would agree with you on that standpoint. And I wouldn't say like filler is still not the best word for it, but it's a table setting episode. It's an episode, progresses everything forward. It sets up other things. And so like when we get those episodes with like the big moments, it tastes better. Yeah, it hits harder. It tastes better. You haven't marinated, so it's like, oh, that hits well.
Yeah, I think I mean, a lot of reviewers, it seems like, especially when they're talking about like episodes, they review episodes in like a vacuum.
Yeah.
They look at it as a very like standalone, like if I just watched this with no context, would it be interesting? Probably not. Like if you'd never seen any other Invincible episodes before or anything like that, this wouldn't mean a whole lot to you.
No, and I hate when reviewers do that. Specifically, like I think of like one movie, and I think Eric, the reviewer I talked to this summer reviewing movies, he did kind of a similar thing with like Infinity War. Like in a vacuum, this film doesn't hold up that great. I'm like, dude, it's not you can't do it.
It's not in a vacuum. Yeah, that's not the
like
context.
it doesn't set up everything else. No, it is like it's a potential episode of MCU. It's the like
you without everything that comes before it, it doesn't matter.
And that's movies, and movies a little bit different where you do it more standalone. But like when it comes to TV shows, you have to put everything else before it in context. You have to think about the future. You have to think like this is episode 2 of season 2. Yeah, this is probably going to be the slowest episode. I'm pretty sure Gen V we talked about.
I think it was episode 2 or episode 3. I feel like
it was still great, but like it was.
You have to have those slower episodes sometimes to kind of set things up and stuff like that. If it was bing bang boom all of the time, you'd never get a chance to breathe, and you wouldn't appreciate the big moments as much.
Exactly. If it was just big moments, it's just like that. It becomes more of a shock and awe show rather than like character moments and building. And Invincible, the comic, this is probably like season 2 is probably during the slowest part of the comic. I will say that because the first like part of the comic, the first couple arcs, it gets boring initially because it's like, oh, typical superhero origin where the show didn't do that. And then it ramps to the big twist of Omni-Man. And then like it's just exciting and interesting. But then after like Omni-Man kind of dies down, you get this like long stretch of filler comics where it's all about Mark becoming a better superhero, and that's what this season is really about. It's about him taking on his dad's burden, becoming that superhero, becoming that better superhero, being the world's savior, but also making up his guilt for being involved with it. At the same time, everything else is starting to build up as well, and we get a lot of that in this episode. And I will say like a lot of this I think is filler because I kind of like I know like what will be in the future and what doesn't. So
think what will be important.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
But things can change. They can change things.
And there is changes in this one that I will talk about. I should have brought up the comic because I'm curious about one of them, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. But based off memory, we'll talk about it when we get there. Okay. But yeah, I will say like there's some of these parts that just like I don't know if it will go any further in the show. It didn't really in the comic. However, the lore building and just knowing like different characters that come up later on in the story is important. And it's nice to be like, aha, I know that. I know that guy.
Yep. I remember. Yeah. From. I remember that. I remember them talking about that or mentioning that. Yep. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Makes it feel like it actually is real and not just like thrown at you. Things need to be established, breadcrumbs, foreshadowing. All that stuff's important.
The grieving of characters, letting them breathe.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
If you just throw them into another thing, it's not, they don't breathe. It becomes kind of like a Marvel film almost, like Thor Ragnarok. It's still great, but like, they didn't breathe.
We don't need to talk about Thor Ragnarok.
I know. I brought it up and I was like, shit, why don't we have Thor Ragnarok
don't, dude? Don't bring up Thor Ragnarok, Robbie.
30 minutes later.
Well, we'll get into another hour-long debate about Thor Ragnarok. All right.
Should we get into it?
Yeah.
All right. So this episode starts off. They're graduating. They're graduating high school. And Mark is obviously not there. It's not really. I feel like this is kind of a common thing. If a superhero is in graduation, he's obviously fighting a villain before his name gets called. He's fighting Doc Seismic.
Yep.
At the Washington Memorial, which is very Spider-Man Monument Memorial. Yeah, Monument. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just love the joke right away. He's like, dude, what's with you in national, like American national, like monuments? Like, why do you keep doing this? National treasures, I think he called it.
Yeah. And wants to destroy or reclaim Mother Earth's materials.
And this is like the first of many like plot points, I'd say. Not plot points. First of many like conflicts.
Mm.
And it was an interesting fight. You would think like, oh, this old dude has no chance. He reminds you like the Vulture almost, which Homecoming reference.
Yeah.
For the Vulture. But he puts up a fight. He doesn't really he beats him. But not necessarily the greatest way. You see that Mark is still growing. He's not his dad yet.
Yep, he
in terms
destroyed
of
the monument even more in an effort to save him.
I can fix it. No, we got this.
Don't touch it. Yeah.
I don't remember if they had a fight at Washington Monument. I remember I thought the last time Doc Seismic came up with Magma Dudes, the plot was a lot bigger. I think in the comics, it was like a Guardians of the Globe situation where full hands on deck. The Magma Dudes were more. I don't remember if it was. I don't think there was a fight between that. So I think this fight is original, and I think they're not shelving, but they're not fully utilizing Doc Seismic. But I think that makes sense because in the comics there was 30, 40 issues.
Yep, they have a lot more time to kind of delve into random. Lesser cared about villains and stuff like that, but it's good to give them their time and show them a little respect. But at the same time, I don't know if anyone cares too much about Doc Seismic.
No, and his story is small. I don't even know unless they do that storyline in the comic, and I'm wrong. This is the second of 3 instead of first of 2. He might come back, but I think he might come back still.
He kind of seems more like a joke villain in a sense.
He's a formidable joke villain. He put up a fight.
Oh, he definitely did. But
I just like his crazy dude. We're gonna take it back. We're gonna take all the grannies. Isn't every house made of granite? Are you taking all the houses?
You keep the ones made of wood.
It's just the funny thing. We're taking back the ground. Dude, what? Okay.
You can keep your houses built from trees.
He's a goofy villain. I enjoyed him in the comics, but he is just kind of goofy, not a one-off, but he'll come back. And this is what I like about Invincible. If you see a villain, they usually come back at some point, and it's not necessarily they're this big, it's their turn to shine, kind of like Spider-Man, Batman, and all that. But it's more hey, they'll show them here and there. They're not that big of a threat because
we didn't forget about them. They still exist in the world.
Mark's invincible. They're not that great, but for him growing up, they're formidable villains.
Right. Well, they could definitely teach him valuable lessons about how to use his powers.
Yep. So we get a little bit more over the summer. We're noticing that days are moving quickly in this episode, and there's tension growing between Mark and Debbie. And she's realizing that he's forcing himself to work as Invincible, and he's kind of pushing himself through work. She's struggling, and he's working for Cecil to kind of avoid Nolan's legacy. And I would say this is very similar to the comic. Debbie's storyline is very similar. I will say in the comic, she is a lot more drunk, and I think that moment's to come. But that, to be fair, I think we do show basically that same theme. She's struggling, she's breaking up furniture,
Yeah, she's having definitely some sort of symbolism with stuff staying open.
Yep.
I didn't quite trying to shut the mailbox and it just keeps popping back open, and then the cupboard does the exact same thing.
She's trying to close Omni-Man. She's trying to close Nolan.
That chapter of her life, but it just keeps popping back up.
Yeah, and grief is hard. It's not easy. She went through hell. I will say I do I just overall like that her character is strong. And in the comic, I wouldn't say I feel like the comic is maybe a little bit more relatable, maybe more realistic, because I feel but I take that
people
back.
Can be strong in real life. People can handle things, better, if not perfect, but they can still handle things better than.
In the comic, they show her as completely just gone, completely drunk all the time, just she lost herself in Nolan. Whereas in this one, it's she lost herself, but she's also fighting at the same time,
right?
And I appreciate her doing that, and she does fight for her son. She's still a very strong character in the comics, but I don't know. I feel in the comics, it's I think like her completely losing it and being drunk like all the time, I think is more relatable in that moment, because I think like if you had a relationship 20, 30 years with somebody and you realize that they only think of you as a pet, and that person just like nearly destroyed the world and nearly killed your son, like being like completely losing it makes sense. Whereas like, and I wouldn't say like it doesn't make sense for this version of Debbie to not lose it. And we're still, I think there's still time to show her completely losing it, and like they show moments of it, but it is different from the comic. And I appreciate it at the same time, as well as like, I do appreciate it. Like it's a different version of Debbie.
Yeah. Going through the same struggles, but handling it slightly different.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on that?
On Debbie, no, probably not. I think we kind of touched on it. Yeah.
All right. She confronts Cecil. We learned that Donald Ferguson's still alive.
Yeah. I was wondering why they showed the little teaser in the beginning. It's a good thing that they did that, because I would have totally forgot that he even died.
Yeah, he died.
They didn't show that. Yeah. It's convenient.
They haven't revealed. I think I know how in the comics.
I'm assuming that some sort of clones or something like that would be my guess.
I'm not going to say what he is.
Yeah, you don't.
I'm surprised that they haven't like revealed it.
That's my theory. Is that or maybe he's even just like a robot or something like that, like a maid assistant. I'm
just really surprised that he's alive and they haven't touched on it yet. Like that's like, I was shocked when he died. I was like, wait a second. Like I understand what he is, but I don't understand the death part of it, and or like him coming back. I have an idea, but I don't understand.
Okay, see, they're throwing you for a loop too,
a little bit. So she confronts Cecil, learns that he's alive, and then she does have her breakdown. She's ripping up. Moving on. Eve, they have their party at Eve's forest house, which it would be dope to just have a party and have somebody who can just give you anything.
Yeah, right. Just make drinks from acorns.
Like, hey, I want this special drink here. Like, okay, I'm more of a green person. Like, here's all that you could ever want. Right. Here's a lifetime's worth. Like, thank you. Like, you are like the greatest. You should do more. Like, you can start a whole business. But she tries to do that. She tries to go to Chicago. She even mentioned, hey, sorry for bringing up Chicago to Mark. She rebuilds an apartment, redoes a park. The construction people are upset, for whatever reason. I mean, it does put them out the work.
It's a complicated thing, I feel like, because the point that they brought up obviously was a good point. Like, how do I know it's to code? How do I know that is built right?
It is a good point, but at the same time, I'd be like, you should be more accepting of her help.
Yeah, I think it should definitely be a scenario where maybe you should work together instead of maybe make sure that she's doing it the right way and then allow her to do it.
Yeah, because like, why have a construction crew when you literally could just have one person take a week and rebuild the entire city?
Right.
Like, her power set is just like very convenient. Insane. And it's there's more to come with Adam Eve. I'm excited for her. I really love her character in the comic. Her father and her mom just completely does not accept her powers. They lost her father, lost a job. It seems like it's a one income household. I think
he kind of blames her for him losing his job, even though she wasn't. Blames her for being a superhero.
Yeah, and it went down pretty close to the comics. Like, I wrote that it's different. Like, it's different, but not really. It's same theme of like the same theme. I think it worked a little bit differently, but ultimately it's the same thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Same. Outcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it kind of comes out differently.
Literally gives them a golden apple, and they're like, "No, we can't accept it." It's like
just take it. Yeah.
Like, I'm your kid. Like, I'm here, have the ability to make your lives amazing. And they just like, no. It is what it is. The stowaway Martian from last season, who takes the place of Russ Livingston, he sucks at being a human.
He has a real hard time. I was born as a baby human here on planet Earth.
Like, immediately, like, if anyone's like said that, you'd be like, man, you either are a fucking
you're
alien
an
or you're joking.
Yeah, you're an alien. Like,
I am totally joking.
Especially in a world where you know aliens exist.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you would just know immediately. Like,
how do they not, like, okay, you're an astronaut, you just came from Mars, you're acting weird. You're an alien. Are you a Martian?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you should be able to put 2 and 2 together, you would think. But
I am a little confused about exactly what he is.
Okay.
Without, I don't want any spoilers or anything like that, because
I think you can ask the questions.
Because they show like the Martians there, because like on the planet, but he gets taken by one of those like parasite things that were on the planet, not the Martians. And then it shows him, even in this episode, leaving Mars with all the other Martians dead.
Yep. I don't think it's spoiler.
So is he a Martian or is he one of the parasites?
Okay, so I'll clear this up. It is not spoilerly. There is a future storyline with this, but I won't talk on that storyline. I will just talk what it's setting up and what we've seen so far. So, Shapesmith, what happened was he took the form of Russ Livingston as they were escaping Mars, and he escaped Mars with
instead of that guy. Oh, so that guy is still there. Okay,
yeah, and
that makes a lot more sense.
And he got taken by a hive mind, which they showed in the previews. If any of those hive mind species takes a lesser life form, like humans, or basically a species that doesn't have protection against them, then that species then becomes strong. Like that one person controls the entire hive mind. So the Martians were using them as slaves because, like, without a host, they are just simple-minded, great laborers type of like species. But as soon as they take over human, they become hive mind. They're trying to invade everything. So that's
like got some sort of sentience, essentially.
Yes, and there is a storyline with it, and we do see setup for that through this episode. Right. Which does lead me to believe they're coming this season. And that episode, I think it's going to be later on, is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But I'm guessing episode 7.
So next year?
It's either episode 7 or next episode. It really depends how they take part 1 and part 2 together.
Yeah.
So that's where it depends. I see it going, if they go for the longer approach, then it's going to be episode 7. If I see them doing like a split season approach with 2 different storylines, and Angstrom Levy is the part 1 villain, then it's happening next episode, I believe.
Okay.
So that's my predictions without going into spoilers.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. The Martian thing, and maybe if I had watched, the older or like the episode again, I might have been able to put that together, but it's been a long time since I've watched.
No, hey, it's a great question because like anyone who's watched Invincible might have that same question, and
I was confused about that.
I would want to clear that up for anyone.
No, that definitely cleared it up a lot for me, and it makes a lot more sense than what I thought was going on.
Yeah, and I think like when this storyline concludes, it's like issue 42, 43. I was looking back at my own comic catalog because I'm like, I have the Darkwing one. That's issue 21. I have it there, and I have the comic where that storyline takes place. It is pretty fun.
I will also just point out real quick that this is the first episode where we see the city. What's it called? Night City? No, it's not Night. That's from Cyberpunk.
Oh, we're getting there.
Okay.
I forget what the city's name too.
Yeah. I won't jump ahead to
that. So just finishing up on this, I'd say this is pretty similar to the comics. This storyline's pretty similar. We see the Guardians a little bit, and we see Shapesmith joining the current Guardians because he gets inspired. Guardians need work, a lot of work. Like they're training. They're not getting back in the field until they are a top-notch team, which understandable. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we see a little bit of I would say if this was The Boys, it'd be completely like a porno essentially, but this is a very tame version of it. We see Rex walking in the shower, and he talks to Kate, and he's like, "Ooh, yeah, let me get you some sugar. I have an owie that needs some kissing." Kate's like, "No, that's a one-time deal." And then she starts moaning, and here walks out the Immortal.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I didn't expect that.
I saw the sour
It's
sheen.
kind of creepy.
And then like immediately once I saw the moaning face, I'm like, oh shit, they're doing this right away. Wait, no, this makes sense. This lines up in the comics.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by it. It's kind of creepy because he's what, a
1,000
million
years
years
old.
old or something. Yeah,
He's
and she's
Abe
like 18.
Lincoln.
Yeah.
But
wait,
like
he is Abe Lincoln?
Yeah, he's Abe Lincoln.
Is that a spoiler? Wait,
no,
what?
no, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. All right.
He is Abe Lincoln. He's a couple other
cool.
figures too, but Abe Lincoln's like the one I think of. If you look at him, you're like, oh wait, that makes sense.
I could totally see that now. It's just a big beefy Abe Lincoln.
I don't think this is spoilerific, but spoilerific, is that a word?
Sure,
I don't think this is spoiler talk at all, but I will say like something in the comics explaining the relationship. He does talk about it, and they'll probably have an episode where he does explain like why he got with essentially an 18-year-old, or she might be an 18, early 20s, a young adult at best.
Basically, well, compared to him though, a child.
But to be fair, from his standpoint, he talked about it like no one matches him. And so like for him, someone who never ages, someone who always is around, like it's basically 18 up. And like he sees every lover he's ever had dies. So it's
I mean that's fair. There's fair points to be made, but it's still weird.
So, but I will say Kate and Immortal, they are a thing throughout the comics.
Okay.
I guess that's spoiler, but it's a fun storyline in like the future ones.
Okay.
So, but definitely like worth mentioning, and I'm happy they brought it in here.
Okay.
So now Cecil, Mark, they're talking. You know, Mark's just going place to place to place. He's just constantly putting out fires. He goes to forget what the city's called. But it's a cursed city. And it's something I'm doing similar in like our own story that we're working on together, where the idea of like the city's just cursed with eternal darkness, and we see Darkwing 2 killing people.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this encounter?
I really liked going to the city. That was interesting. Actually seeing it and him kind of Cecil explaining that it was cursed by the Midnight Man or something like that. I think it was the guy's name, Midnight Mage.
That tracks. Yeah, I forget I forget the story behind it.
Yeah, and then encountering, like Darkwing's assistant.
Yeah, assistant.
Yeah, and I feel like that whole interaction was interesting. Like the Shadow Realm was interesting.
Night Boy, Shadow powers.
Yeah, even a little bit of like the scariness that Mark shows. Like he scares the crap out of him.
Well, it makes sense, but like, is it like, hey, I'm gonna stay here and die, or
yeah, I'm not letting you go, basically. It made sense, but it was a little like, not very hero-y.
No,
like the way he just kind of like buckled down and was just basically like, hey, it could have been a bluff. It very well could have been a bluff, but it didn't seem like a bluff.
I think it was a bluff, but yeah, the whole point of like it shows you Mark has the capability of being evil.
Yeah. And how easy it would be for him to be evil.
And this moment is like why it's so important to have episodes like this, because like that side of it tees up a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things in this season alone, and we'll get to why that matters, and as well as like future seasons down the road, because like there's moments where Mark does things as questionable for a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one reason why I love this comic, and probably this show too, is there's a lot of like philosophy talk when it comes to how to be a superhero. And this is like this
definitely not black and white.
No, not at all. So after he's done with Darkwing, he gets a sign, or Cecil's like, come help. And they go to the ocean where there's this weird sign. It's glowing, and he has to appease the Atlanteans because
Nolan killed Kingfish or whatever.
Kingfish, Kingfish, and by law he has to marry the widow.
His widow.
And have sex with the widow. And this, I'll be honest, they threw in for a loop because I remember this comic. Like I remember reading it like couple of times, and just like every time I read it, I'm like, wait, why the fuck is this like part of it? And like it feels very fillery in the comics, but at the same time, like it's like the one thing I remember the most where you're like, oh, he's supposed to have sex with the fish. I forgot about this. And I think they did it differently too, because he went down there and like, no, you just have to fight a kaiju. We're not savages.
Yeah,
and
right.
I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure that's not how they did in the comic. I think he just ran away because he didn't want to have sex with her.
Okay. I feel it teed him up for more of a moment.
Yeah. But then he battles the kaiju, and I think this is where philosophy comes in, right? He battles the kaiju, he gets away. The kaiju starts attacking the Atlanteans
because he gets freed because of Cecil's missiles.
Yep, and then Cecil's like, nope, leave it there. He's like, no, I have to save them. Like, I'm a hero. It doesn't matter that like they made me fight this thing. Like, I do have to save them, and then they call it even. And I think again, like this just shows who Mark is. This whole show is about Mark possibly being dark and evil, and we see many sides of that. But like that,
at the same time, you see these moments too where he wants to be a hero.
He is a hero. This moment shows it. In this movie, like this is the marination that you see.
Even against Cecil's orders, he still chooses to be a hero,
and that tees up a lot of things right there on its own. And like, yeah, it's big moments. They're teasing, foreshadowing. It's there.
Absolutely.
Then that's kind of like where the episode ends, and then we get kind of not a end credit scene, but they do that little like
short. Yeah, I almost walked away.
I did miss the
beginning part of it.
Never mind. We got more to show you.
They psyched me out.
Angstrom Levy, not Levy. I always called him Levy. It's
Levy.
fucking with me when they're like Levy.
Yeah, you were wrong all this time. No, you were wrong, Jake. Did you ask Robert Kirkman what his name was?
It's Levy.
Yeah.
I'm okay as long as it's not like an Ong situation.
Yeah, but I mean, this is made by the creators. This isn't Night Shyamalan reinterpreting Robert Kirkman's work. This is him.
I know. It's just in my head. It's been Levy this entire time. So it feels wrong for me. But anyway,
I'll just correct you every time.
Angstrom Levy travels to an alternate Earth where Mark is captured, and he learns how they captured him, and he gains information, which I'm pretty sure this is like a tease that happened in the comics. It looked really familiar, and it sets up season 2 so much, and I'm so excited for it because it's all like it's about his revenge. It's about him, and I think if they spend season 2 on him, it's worthy, and I think that's the direction they're going, but it still might be a part 1 thing. I don't know. But either way, thoughts on the episode?
I liked it. I enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't like the most exciting or anything like that best episode, but you need to have episodes like this in order to really appreciate the other episodes even more.
Agreed. What rating would you give it?
I mean, like in the scope of Invincible, at least a 3+, if not like a 4-.
I gave it 3.
I gave it definitely not the best, but I think it's definitely a solid episode. I don't see anything wrong with it.
I thought it was good. There's great moments.
I wasn't bored at all. I mean, it was entertaining.
That's fair. If you're not bored, you're good.
Well, it's a good sign. You know,
I mean, like we're both ADHD individuals, so if we're bored, it's like, oh, okay, there's something wrong with it. But if we're both like engaged, ready like to watch all of it, like, and I will say I was that way. I am biased towards Invincible. I want to see all of it. Yeah,
I mean, I am too in the same way, but not in the same way. But obviously, I am a fan.
Way.
Yeah, but
I would say 3+, just because like it's good. It's arguably great, but I don't think it's like the best. It's not like this isn't the episode. No, and like if someone's like this is the worst episode of Invincible of all time, I'd be like, maybe.
Yeah, and if it is, then that just goes to show how good the show is. If this is the worst episode,
like, that's good. Like this,
that's a good sign.
This is supposed to be a slower episode, and
every show has to have a worst episode. That's just how it works. It doesn't mean it's a bad episode. It just means it's the worst out of what was already there, if anything. And I don't even know if I could say that. I'd have to rewatch the first season again before I could make a claim like that.
That's fair. All right. A few questions, and then I want to list everything that we're all the things that are heating up or like villains to keep in mind, and I might have you add to the list if you can think of something.
Okay.
So first couple of questions. Thoughts on Mark and Cecil's relationship?
I like it. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. I think Cecil is a very interesting character because I
fucking love Cecil
because he is like you really feel like he is a good guy, but at the same time you understand like it's like he's like the good guy that has to make the tough decisions. That has to make those choices, and sometimes it's not going to be a perfect outcome every time, but it's going to be a decision made.
Oh, for sure. He reminds me of Doctor Strange and like the last movie that Doctor Strange was in. And so much the fact that like he's cold, he's calculating, but like he does like overall a good person, but like he is cold and calculating. Not reckless though.
No, not definitely reckless.
Not. Doctor Strange is reckless.
Yeah.
But like Cecil is
reserved.
And I'm excited for that relationship between Mark and Cecil because it goes places.
Yeah, and I could see it going both ways. I can obviously see Cecil affecting Mark more, but I could also see Mark having somewhat of an impact on Cecil.
Yeah,
through his actions.
It's wonderful. I'm excited to see it. What's your thoughts on Amber so far this season?
Better than last season, I feel like. I'll say that again, but it doesn't feel like there's a big part there. It still feels like a very minimal part of what's going on.
So far, yeah. She's like the good girlfriend that understands now.
Yeah, now all of a sudden she's just like super understanding and
but
she's still just kind of like
there.
Yeah, it just feels like she just exists for the sake of existing.
Yeah, and that's kind of like her comic counterpart too. I will say that. I do like how in season 1 they made her like a stronger character because before she was just like a girl. Whereas, like in this one, like no, she's a girl with hobbies and dreams and like a personality.
Yeah, I'll give her that. I mean, yeah, it's just I think in the context, it doesn't seem as important to the big story at this point.
Yeah, I also like the actress who the actress who plays her. Zaza Beetz, or I forget her name, but she plays Domino in Deadpool 2. She plays.
That chick. Yeah.
I think that's right. She's in Atlanta. She plays.
Was she in
Viv? No.
Who was the one who plays the neighbor in Joker? That wasn't her, was it?
No, that's her too. Yeah.
Is it? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Damn,
she's neighbor too. She's a really good actress. So I like the fact that she's just part of the show. Thoughts on Kate and Immortal? I think we already talked about this.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It weird.
Last
but
one.
Understandable yet weird.
It is weird. It was never not weird.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Debbie and Mark's depression and them going through grief and the just like that adventure for continuing this episode.
It's realistic. It's understandable. It's it's a pretty big trauma that they both went through.
I love the fact that they're just showing it because I feel we brought up Thor Ragnarok already, but not bringing up that one, not bringing up that movies in particular. I feel like this is something that like doesn't get too much light. We do with Iron Man and Iron Man 3 after your Avengers. We get that a little bit. We get even Loki touched on it a little bit. But we don't get it a lot. We don't see it for a long time where like even Endgame after Infinity War, we see it, but we don't see it for a long time. Whereas no, this is just they're grieving this season.
I mean, it definitely feels a lot more personal too. Like obviously, like in Avengers and stuff like that, like it was, like the whole half of the world, like that's a big deal. But it's different when it's your family and like more like Hawkeye's kind of stake in Endgame and stuff like that, like showing how much that affected him, losing his whole family,
exactly
kind of thing.
Okay, so should we list the things that are heating up?
Sure.
Okay. So here's everything that's heating up. I think I'm counting how much I have. I think I have 8. Please add more.
Okay, if I have anything.
Can think of it. Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's like the people or villains or organizations that are like planning and plotting. We have the alien hive mind.
Yep.
That we
very interested in seeing how that plays out.
It is fun.
It's a different kind of threat for sure.
Oh yeah. We have, to a lesser degree, Lizard League.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah.
In this episode,
they do show dude gets his head blown off.
Yeah, King Lizard kills Supreme Lizard.
Yeah, just cold-blooded.
I think I remember that part in the comics, but Lizard League, yeah, they are small time, but they are part of a larger plot.
Mm-hmm.
Doc Seismic.
Yep.
Angstrom Levy and Alternate Mark.
Yep.
That's like the big highlight. The other big highlight, Omni-Man is still out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have no idea where he is or what he's doing.
Well, you have no idea.
Yeah.
The listeners who haven't read Invincible.
Comment. Yeah, exactly.
I know exactly where he is.
You think you know exactly where he is.
I would be surprised if they switched up on this part.
Yeah.
I would be surprised. They could move him, but I would be surprised. The other big one that I would just want to highlight and mention, and I will say they were in the trailer, the Viltrumite Empire.
Yeah, I do remember that in the trailer.
There was one Viltrumite, and she was a very infamous Viltrumite for reasons that probably won't that may or may not even happen in the show, and it won't happen until season 5, 6, 7.
I think I know what you're talking about now. I won't say anything. You spoiled this part for me.
I'm sorry, man.
No, it's okay.
it was one of the biggest comic controversies in a while.
Yeah.
So, but she's an infamous member. I believe that's who was in the trailer.
Okay.
So
that would be something.
And the other two, I forget his name. I want to say Brick, but it's the mafia dude.
Oh. The guy
season.
that Mark helped take over.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. That's a good point.
He's still out there. We haven't talked about him this season, but he's still there. And the last one I want to say, and that's maybe everyone's favorite. He's on my comic book wall. I don't even know if you can see him. Nope, I don't see him on it. He's on my wall. Battle Beast.
Oh, yep. Battle Beast.
To be fair, he's one of the characters that I'm told is going to be utilized a lot more in the comic. Because in the comic, we don't see him until there's 140-ish issues. I think it's 140. We see him in an issue 114.
Is that the first time you see him in the comics?
No, second time. We see
him. So you do see him early on still, like we did.
Yeah. It's season 1 was very much like Battle Beast. He comes back in a glorious way, glorious. Is there any more that I'm missing? I can't think of the other villains.
It's been a little while. Like I said, it's been a while since I watched season 1. I'm gonna have to watch it again soon to recoup and remember anything that might have slipped by. But I mean, I guess the actual Guardians, potential Guardian replacements and stuff holding a grudge against Mark. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but
oh, yeah, true.
Darkwing's assistant, he can't be the only one that has that feeling, resentment.
We also got to mention the fish people too.
Yep. That I feel
I think they're good.
Of the Guardians.
Yeah, I think that's it. I don't remember anyone else that they teed up. There is the other one-off villains that do. I didn't want to list them individually, but there is the one. Like I told you, if we see a villain, we usually see them again, and we already have seen them in episode 1. There was the magma dude, and he was he's the magma dude during the brick fight with Battle Beast, along with the guy with the tentacle hands. We already seen them in episode 1, but they were just kind of there.
Yep.
They come back, and they all have grudges against Invincible. But it's not, I wouldn't say they're heating up. They're kind of the small bad guys. So Rhino, if we're comparing to Spider-Man. He's there, but he's a guy.
They could definitely cause some damage, but ultimately not a huge threat.
Yeah, not a plot point to ooh. But we do have 8, and that's, before we go, I just want to highlight that we have 8 different threats that that are circling Mark. And this episode highlighted what, half of it? Alien,
quite a few.
Lizard League, Doc Seismic, Angstrom, Levy.
I said it wrong.
Alternate Mark. You can almost put that in its own thing too.
Yeah.
But I think they go hand in hand. You could put Darkwing on there because I know like he does come back in the comic, but not in a big way. But that like that I know of. But you could also put him in here too. Like Darkwing could have his own like storyline.
Mm.
And like if I didn't know the comics, I think Darkwing would also be put in here. So you have like 5 things that are heating up. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say about this episode?
I don't think so. I enjoyed it. I'm excited for the next one. I think the next one will be even better.
I think so. I'm curious where I'm curious which plot points they're going out first because they're not doing it in order in the comics. So it's like I'm guessing each episode. I remember when this episode came out, I was waiting for Sapphire to get home. I like peeked ahead. She hates when I do this. But I'm just like, I just want to know what this episode's about. I'm like, oh, it's the fish episode. It's the fish comic.
You didn't get that from the title of the episode?
I didn't see the title.
The title is like How I Lost My Virginity to a Fish or something like that. I feel like that kind of explains it.
It does. I didn't see the title right away. I just clicked and like paste through it. I was like, it's the fish episode. And it's also the Darkwing episode. So I'm like, I was happy for it.
It's called In About 6 Hours, I'll Lose My Virginity to a Fish. That's what the episode's called.
I did see it like eventually. I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun. Last question, we'll sign off. If you were Mark and you were told you had, in order to keep the peace between the Atlanteans and the like the land dwellers, do you have sex with that fish?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it's a different question when you're talking about somebody that's like 18 years old.
Oh, that's fair.
And doesn't quite have like the priorities in the same place and stuff like that. Whereas if you're like a 40-year-old guy that's been doing this for a long time and you're like, oh, I just gotta fuck a fish and save the world, like this is easy.
I just like, I got a girlfriend at home. Like, no, you just gotta fight the kaiju. Like, fuck, man. I don't know. It's rather fuck the fish.
Yeah, right. It would have been easier.
All right. Well, that's it. Brandon, thank you for coming on. It seems like we're going to do each episode. We have 2 left. Then we have a long break. I'm excited to see where this goes. I don't
curious to see how the mid-season is going to end. If it's going to give us some conclusion or if it's just going to be a hardcore cliffhanger and we're going to have to wait a year before we really get anything good.
From the reviews I'm seeing and like the little bit I've read, I didn't like do too spoilerly of a research. From what I've seen, it seems like it's going to be more of a slower build-up than it is just like immediately part 1, part 2. Like I think they're taking their time this season, but I don't know that. I do not know that for sure. I think Angstrom Levy is going to be the villain. But there's a chance that Omni-Man, that plot line kind of cuts into. We'll see.
Okay.
He's out there. That's all I'm going to say. Viltrumite Empire, though, does make an appearance. And I think... Yeah. I think I know that's going to go. But we'll leave it at that. All right. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Jake.
All right. Thank you, everyone who's listening. And we are out.